My April animal lover video is going to be about rhinoceros, or rhinoceroses, not rhinoceri. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do 10 points, 10 things you may not know about rhinoceroses. 1, they're ancient. They are part of the, here comes Bob. They are part of the, they're megafauna, which means this massive vegetarian eating animal. And they go back, they were in North America, they were in all across Eurasia, and they were in Africa as they are now. And then they were in Europe as recently as 10,000 years ago. That was the last of the woolly rhinos. And they are drawn on the caves of Chauvet. Look at how beautiful this is. This is not an inexperienced hand making these drawings. These are just stunningly elegant. But this is to say that we've been with rhinos in reality and mythologically for a very long time as human beings. Number 2, Albrecht Dürer created a famous woodcut of a rhinoceros in 1515. It was based on a written description. The written description, and a brief sketch apparently, came from an unknown artist, and the sketch was of an Indian rhinoceros that had arrived in Lisbon earlier that year in 1515. Dürer never saw a rhinoceros, but he made this engraving. And for 200 years, that's what Europeans thought what a rhinoceros looked like, literally. How decorative he was. So point 3, third thing, what's left of rhinos? There were 1.65, this is way back, there were 1.65 different little subspecies of rhinos. Now there are 4, basically 4. All of them endangered to some extent. The white rhino, the most populous, and the black rhino. The 2 of them live on Africa, and there are subspecies of both of those. And then in Asia, there's the Indian rhino, which is also up into Nepal. And the Indian rhino there's a smaller version of the Indian rhino, which is called the Javan rhino, which is on Java, which is an island in Indonesia. And also, I think, a bit in the Malay Peninsula is where the Javan rhino, what is left of it, remains. And the most endangered of them is the Sumatran rhino, which lives in Sumatra, which is an island just to the west of Java and to the south of Singapore, and that's where that terrible tsunami hit a decade ago. And where they also recently discovered a 3rd species of orangutan in one particular forest on Sumatra. They have no idea how many Sumatran rhinos may or may not be left because the jungle is too dense and they can't count them, but they just know there are not very many. The Sumatran rhino is also the oldest. It hasn't really changed for 15 million years, and it sort of broke off from the wool. It's more closely related. Its genes are more connected to the woolly rhinoceros, which is extinct than to any other the living species of rhinos. So, what do we have? 4, white rhinos. Now, I've never met any of the Indian or the Javan or the Sumatran rhinos. The only rhinos that I have met in the zoos where I have met them have been white rhinos and black rhinos. So white rhino is the biggest of all of them. And you can tell the difference between a white rhino and a black rhino, which are the 2 we most commonly see in imagery anywhere, is the white rhino has the square jaw. Now, I met a white rhino it's a white rhino behind me. I should, whoops, scooting the wrong way. Anyway, it's George behind me. He's a white rhino that I met, though his real name is Mumbles. He's a white rhino from the Houston Zoo. So white rhinos, they have the square jaw, and they're grazers, they're lawnmowers. They're just rolling across, they're down that jaw, down to the grass, eating their way across the savanna. And they are, because they're mainly grass eaters, they do live on the savanna in the open areas, maybe a little bit of mud, a little bit of a shade tree, but you know, the rhino that I saw day by itself when I was in Kenya in 1985 was undoubtedly a white rhino because it was out in the savanna. Number 5. 5, black rhinos. So black rhinos also share the continent of Africa with the white rhino, and they are smaller, maybe 15 to 20% smaller, and instead of having a square jaw, their upper lip comes down to a point. And it's a prehensile lip, which means it's like this little, it's like the tip of the trunk of an African elephant is also a prehensile trunk. It means like hand-like, it's finger-like or something like that. So they literally can pick things up. Whereas the white rhino is a lawnmower, the black rhino eats leaves and berries and things. And neither the white rhino nor the black rhino has any front teeth. Well, their teeth are back here because they both use their lips to grab their food. So when I was in Wichita at the Sedgwick County Zoo, I had the opportunity to feed and pet one of their black rhinos, Clyde. And so Clyde, I just put my hand out like this, and I'm like, oh my God, this big rhino. And he's, of course, behind his big cage bars. And he just comes through, and his little thing just goes down and scoops up this, whatever it was, a carrot maybe, out of my hand, just like it was like just fingertips on my palm. I couldn't believe, here's this rhino, and that's what it was. It was just so, so soft. And then the skin on them, right here, on this part of the lip between their horn and their little prehensile upper lip, is the softest thing. So he seemed, by all appearances, Clyde liked to be touched and pet. So he liked it when I was touching this part. He liked it when he was, eating out of my hand. He liked eating, undoubtedly. And even on the back of his hide, where it's really hard, he also seemed to like being touched. So I also met in Cleveland last October. I did see a female rhino who was very close to, she was pregnant. They're big animals, so it's hard to see that she's pregnant, but if you look closely, I think you can probably tell that she is, and she was, and she successfully had her baby just a few months ago. Something else that I read when I was researching this about black rhinos that I hope isn't as true as it says, but in the wild, they apparently kill each other. They kill each other more than any other mammal. And in places, they're very territorial, they're very solo, and they have this dangerous weapon on the front of their face. And up to 50%, what I read, I hope it's not true, up to 50% of black rhinos are killed by another black rhino rather than dying of a natural cause, and up to 30% of females. And it's almost an unimaginably high statistic. So let's hope it is. Number 6. Physical factors. Rhinos have terrible eyesight, they have excellent hearing, and they have an excellent olfactory sense, which is their sense of smell. In fact, they have a brain on the smaller size for how big an animal they are. But in that smaller brain, the largest portion of it is taken up with olfactory. So they are processing information with their sense of smell. These guys are big, of course, but they can be fast. Rhinos can run up to 30 miles an hour. So the fastest humans, and not me, can run up to 15 miles an hour. So you're in deep something or other. Rhinos have no natural predators. We're it. The people who are killing them for their horns. Rhinos' only natural predators appear to be other rhinos. Besides being super, super fast, they can also turn on a dime. So you think hippos can do the same, but they're remarkably agile given how big they are. So there's a lot of muscle underneath all of that. Number 7, they're relatives. Rhinos are odd-toed ungulates. They have 3 toes. There's not a lot of odd-toed ungulates left over. So one of the classes, there's 3 classes of odd-toed ungulates, and one of them has rhinoceros, and the third one has tapirs, and the first one is equus, is horses. It's horses and asses, all the various wild asses of the world, and zebras are what's most closely related to the rhino. And odd-toed ungulates, I think it's so strange that there would be a correlation between number of toes and digestive tract, but there apparently is. So all odd-toed ungulates actually digest food in their intestines and not in one or more stomach chambers. Okay. Number 8, rhinoceros, or maybe more pointedly, a rhino penis. It's an extraordinary thing if you get a chance to see one. I saw Clyde's at least twice when I was in Wichita for a week. It wasn't related to any sexual arousal that I could tell, but it's quite long, it's quite thin. I think it can be 2.5, I mean, it can be really long like this. But it's thin for its length, but it also at the end, it does this like twisty thing. It does this 90-degree angle or this curlicue thing. I looked it up online to see how other things they were. It has this little weird, it's like, how can that work as a sexual tool if it's got that little curve on the end of it? It was really strange, but in fact, the female rhino has corresponding twists and turns inside of her, so that when they do finally lock together, they're there for a good little time. Now, the lovely keeper that I met in Wichita told me, and I haven't read this anywhere else, but my God, it does make sense, that since rhinos have this peculiar, male has this peculiar penis, and when they're having sex, then they lock into this position, which takes them a while to get into, and then which they stay in for longer than most mammals. That was where the whole mythology about aphrodisiac came from, because the male rhinos seem to be able to have sex for much longer than males of most other species. So, let's eat some part of him, and won't we be able to do the same thing? It's really, I don't know that's true, but it's a good story, and it might be true. Number 9 is the names. So rhinoceros, rhino is from the Latin, which is from the Greek, and rhino is nose, and cerus is from the same word that keratin comes from, so hair. So it's horn, it's a hair nose or hair horn. That's what the word means. And the irony is that this thing which they're being killed for is just hair. It's just hair that grows very densely and compacted and gets smushed together and beaten down and it, hardens, but it's really just hair. It has no medicinal properties. And number 10 is extinction. It's quite possible, I don't have children, but it's quite possible that my great nieces and great nephews there will not be rhinoceros on the planet anymore when they have children of their own. Sad thing, because they are a wonderful and magnificent beast that really just wants to eat its greens and go about its life. So, I'm a child of the 50s. In Kenya in the 1950s, there were more than 20,000 black rhinos. Now, there's less than 500.